In the Arizona Territory, in the shadow of the Dragoon Mountains, a young rancher rode into a Chiricahua Apache camp to trade horses. What he rode out with was not what he bargained for. The chief, in front of every man in that camp, offered him a woman no one had wanted, a woman the band had turned against. What the cowboy chose in that moment set off something neither of them could have predicted. A bond that suspicion couldn't break, that danger only made plainer, until the day it cost him nearly everything he had built. Stay with this story till the very end. You won't see the ending coming. And if it moves you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It means more than you know. The Dragoon Mountains broke the horizon like a fist of granite. Wesley Crane had ridden through that country before, the long pale flats of the Sulphur Springs Valley giving way to the broken rock at the mountain's feet, the scrub oak climbing higher than it had any right to, the air clean and thin and carrying the smell of sage after a night's rain. He knew the land the way you know any country you've lived on the edge of, well enough to move through it, not well enough to claim it. He was 27 years old. He ran horses on 160 acres northeast of Tombstone, hard-worked grass and rocky soil his father had left him when the old man died of a summer fever 3 years back. The colts he was raising were good ones, compact and sure-footed, and he'd been meaning to sell a matched pair to the camps in the Dragoons for better than a year. He finally had no good reason not to go. He had run out of reasons to put things off. The ranch was quiet in a way that was starting to feel permanent, not peaceful quiet, the other kind. He ate alone and fixed things alone and lay awake some nights listening to the wind work at the roof. He hadn't had a real conversation in 2 weeks, maybe 3. He rode into the Chiricahua camp just past the midday hour, 2 horses on a lead behind him. The camp was set into a canyon mouth, sheltered on 3 sides by the rock walls and shaded by a stand of cottonwoods following a thin stream. He could smell cook fire smoke before he saw the first brush dwelling. He came in slow, hands visible, the way you do when you want men with rifles to make their own minds up about you. He'd done this before. You let them see you're not afraid and you're not a fool, and then you wait. An older man came forward. Not old, the word that fit was elder. He was lean and straight-backed, and his face was the face of someone who had made hard decisions for a long time and had stopped flinching. Wesley later learned his name was Nantaje. He was the headman of this small band, one of the last groups that had not yet been pressed north to the San Carlos. Wesley spoke what Spanish he had. Nantaje answered in kind, and between them they had enough language to trade in. The 2 horses were brought forward and inspected carefully. Nantaje's men ran their hands down the legs, checked the teeth, watched the animals move. They knew horse flesh. They knew it better than Wesley did, probably. The negotiation had gone on perhaps 20 minutes when Nantaje stopped it. He turned and said something to the men behind him. Wesley couldn't follow the Chiricahua words. But a murmur moved through the men gathered there, not an approving murmur, something more complicated. A few of them looked away. A woman was brought forward. She walked on her own. No one pushed her, but no one stood beside her either. She stopped a few feet from Wesley and looked at him without lowering her eyes. She was perhaps 22, 23. A narrow face with a strong jaw and dark eyes that held a quality he could only describe, later, as a person who had decided to stop being afraid of what other people thought. She wore a calico blouse and a deerskin skirt, and her black hair was braided with a thin strip of red cloth. There was a scar along her left forearm, starting just below the elbow and running several inches toward her wrist. Old scar tissue, long-healed, white against her brown skin. Nantaji spoke again, and the Spanish came out halting, but clear enough. The woman's name was Sonsi. She was a widow. The band would give Wesley both of his asking horses, plus 2 more fine animals in return for taking her to his ranch and giving her a home there. Wesley did not say anything for a moment. He understood what he was looking at. Not a transaction, a casting out. Whatever had happened to make this woman unwanted in her own camp, the terms of the offer were not really about the horses. They were about solving a problem the band had and didn't know how else to resolve. He looked at Sonsi. She was already looking at him. Her expression said nothing and everything. She knew exactly what this moment was. She had already spent some portion of her life being discussed by men in front of her as though she were not there. Wesley said, in his slow, poor Spanish, that he would take the woman. He said it carefully, so Nantaji would understand. Not as property, as a person who would have her own place at his ranch, her own roof, her own say. Nantaji translated. Sonse gave no reaction. She simply turned and went back toward the dwellings. She came back 10 minutes later with a small bundle of her belongings tied in deerskin and a cradle board strapped to her back, empty, from some other time or someone else's child, he couldn't tell. She mounted the spare horse without help and waited. They rode out of the canyon in silence, the mountains behind them, the long valley ahead. Wesley didn't try to make conversation. He wasn't sure he had the language for it, and he wasn't sure conversation was what either of them needed right then. They rode side by side on the slow road south, and the only sounds were the horses and the wind, and occasionally a hawk above the pale grass. Once, he looked sideways at her and caught her looking at him. She turned her eyes back to the trail immediately. He did the same. The ranch looked smaller when he got home than it usually did. He showed her the spare room off the kitchen. It had a window facing east. He'd used it as a storage room since his father died, and it still smelled of old leather and axle grease, but the bed was solid and the roof above it was sound. He left the room and let her close the door. He made coffee and sat at the table and stared at nothing for a while. The next morning she was up before he was. He came out of his bedroom and found her at the wood stove. She had already fed it and had the coffee on and was working at something near the back door. It took him a moment to see what. She had found the broken chair he'd shoved into the corner 3 months ago and was looking at the cracked leg with the expression of a person who knows how to fix things and intends to. She glanced at him when he came in, then went back to the chair. He poured his coffee. She didn't take any for herself. He poured a second cup without asking and set it on the table near where she was working and went out to feed the horses. When he came back, the cup was empty and the chair was mended. She had used a piece of rawhide from her bundle to bind the joint. It would hold better than the nail he'd been planning to use. He sat down at the table. He said, "Thank you." He said it in English first and then tried the Spanish word. She looked up. She said something in Chiricahua. He shook his head, not understanding. She pointed at the chair and then at him with a short, precise gesture that clearly meant yours. Then she went to find something else to do. That was more or less how the next several weeks went. The language came in pieces. Wesley had picked up a little Chiricahua from a scout years ago. Broken fragments good enough to name animals and simple actions. Sansi's Spanish was better than she'd first let on. She had kept it back cautiously. The way you don't spend money you're not sure you can replace. As the weeks passed, she spent it more freely. He learned that she'd been born in the canyon country near the Chiricahua's old summer grounds to the north. That she had married at 17, a good man, she said. He had died in a raid 3 years back. Not fallen in battle, he had died in the pursuit afterward, chasing down riders who had taken horses from the band. There was a warrior in the band named Duclure, who had led that pursuit, who had, by some accounts, been slow to call the retreat, who had watched Sonsei's husband ride into an ambush and done nothing. Duclure had come for Sonsei the following spring, expecting to step easily into the place her husband had occupied. She had refused him in front of people. In the months that followed, Duclure had made sure the band understood that Sonsei's husband's death was partly her fault, that she'd been the one who'd pushed him to ride harder, to fight more, to prove himself. It wasn't true, but Duclure was powerful, and she was a widow and a woman alone. And truth requires someone willing to speak it, and few people were willing. Wesley listened to this account on a cool evening in November, when they were both sitting on the porch steps, watching the last of the light leave the western sky. She told it in pieces, part Spanish, part the Chiricahua words she'd been teaching him, and he filled in what he could from context. She told it without self-pity, the way you tell facts about the weather or the condition of a road. When she finished, he was quiet for a while. He said that what Duclure had done was cowardice twice over. He said it plain, not trying to soften it. She looked at him for a moment, as if she were measuring whether he believed what he'd just said, or was simply performing sympathy. Then she looked back at the darkening sky. She seemed to accept that he meant it. By December, the silences between them had changed in quality. Early on, the silence had been the silence of two strangers being careful around each other. Then it became something more like the silence of two people who both have too much to say and too little language to say it. By December, it was a different thing entirely. The silence in the evenings, both of them at the table or on the porch, had a kind of ease to it, a rightness. He stopped noticing it and started relying on it. He had not been sick in years. A cold came on hard in late October and pinned him for 4 days. He woke in a half fever to find a poultice of something fragrant laid across his chest and a clay cup of bitter tea on the bedside crate. Sonsei was already gone from the room. She had gathered the herbs from some dry draw near the ranch. He never asked how she knew. She simply knew. By the second day, the fever had broken. She had started teaching him too. She knew which desert plants the horses would avoid and which were safe. She knew how to strip and dry agave hearts for provisions that would keep through winter. She knew how to read a dust haze on the horizon and what it meant about incoming weather. Wesley had ranched in that country for years and discovered he had not been paying close enough attention. He woke one morning in the first days of the new year to find her cradle board propped against the barn wall where the sun could warm it. She'd cleaned it and restrung it with fresh rawhide thongs. He asked about it, and she answered with one word, the Chiricahua word for memory. He didn't ask more. He found himself doing small things without thinking about it, leaving the coffee on the stove in the mornings in case she rose after him, clearing a better view from her east-facing window when the mesquite overgrew it, fixing the sticking latch on her door first when there was a list of things to fix. He didn't examine these things. They were just what you did for someone who lived in your house and had begun to matter to you. Then came the riders. It was late January. Wesley was at the far end of the property checking fence line when he heard the horses. 3 of them coming from the south road fast and without any particular attempt to announce themselves. He rode back hard. He got to the yard in time to see them already there. 2 white men, bounty hunters by the look of them, armed and wearing the particular kind of studied indifference that men wear when they're about to do something they know someone will object to. The third man he did not recognize at first glance. He was Chiricahua, younger than the others, with a rifle across his saddle and his eyes on Sonsi. She was standing at the corner of the house. She had not run. Duclura. It was him. Sonsi said his name low when Wesley drew up beside her, and the word was flat and without fear, the way you say the name of a known thing. The bounty hunters had a paper, or claimed to have one. There were rumors, they said, of Chiricahua women who had left the reservation without leave, who could be returned for money. They said this cheerfully, in the way of men who consider paperwork a formality. The one with the paper held it up, but didn't offer to let Wesley read it. Duclure said nothing. He watched Sonsi with the expression of a man who has been waiting a long time to be paid what he thinks he is owed. Wesley said, "She lives here. She is no runaway. She is here on her own say-so and mine both, and any man who wants to dispute that can put his paper down on the ground, and we'll see what it's worth in front of a territorial judge." The bounty hunter with the paper said, "That's not how this works." Wesley said he knew exactly how it worked, because he'd watched men like them operate in this territory for going on 10 years. And there was a right way and a wrong way to go about any business, and a man who won't let another man read the document he's citing is using the wrong way. The two bounty hunters looked at each other. Men like that do their work when there is no one to argue. Arguments are expensive. What happened next was fast and happened mostly in the dark. One of the bounty hunters went for his gun. Wesley had been expecting it and already had his hand on his revolver, but he was a fraction behind. The sound of the shot came from his left, close enough to feel in his chest. He spun and looked. Sonsi stood at the corner of the house. She had his spare rifle, the one he kept loaded on pegs just inside the back door. She had put the shot into the dirt between the horse's feet, not to miss, he understood later, but to make the horses move. They scattered, and in the scramble, the bounty hunters lost the clean moment they'd been waiting for. Wesley fired once into the darkness above Duclure's head, not to hit him, to make the choice clear. Duclure looked at Sonsi for a long count. Then he turned his horse and rode south. The bounty hunters, faced now with 2 guns and no easy advantage, followed. They didn't come back. Wesley stood in the dark yard for a moment, his heart going at the inside of his ribs like it intended to leave. He looked at Sonsi. She still had the rifle up, watching the road, making sure they were actually gone. When she lowered it, the steadiness in her hands was the steadiness of someone who had made a decision and was at peace with having made it. He said, in the best Chiricahua he had, "You didn't have to." She said, in clean, careful English that she had apparently been holding in reserve for exactly this kind of moment, "Yes, I did." He laughed. The kind of laugh that comes out when the thing you feel is too large for any other shape. She looked at him for a second, with something cautious in her face, and then, very briefly, the corner of her mouth moved. They went back inside. He made coffee. She set the rifle back on its pegs. Word got back to the camp and the dragoons. It moves quickly in that country, and a Chiricahua woman with a rifle standing beside a white rancher against Duclure was the kind of story that travels fast. Nantaje sent a man to the ranch 2 weeks later, not as a messenger, but as a matter of respect. The man's name was Chino, one of Nantaje's son-in-laws, quiet and measured. He sat at Wesley's table and spoke to Sonsi and Chiricahua for a long time. What he'd come to say was this: Duclure had lost standing in the camp. It had been the last in a long list of things, and the list had finally grown too long even for those who'd wanted to look away. The elders had made their judgment.
Whatever hold Ducleur had used against Sonsei was gone. Chino said something else that Wesley only understood from how Sonsei sat very still hearing it. He asked her later what it had been. She took her time finding the words. Then she said that it would not be unwelcome if she came home sometimes, that the camp's door was not closed. He asked her what she wanted to do. She looked out the east window. The morning sun was coming through it, laying a strip of light across the floor. She said she didn't know yet. She said she had been so long without a choice that she had forgotten what it felt like to have one. He nodded. He understood that well enough.
Spring came fast and dry, and then suddenly green along the draws. Sonsei had planted a small garden at the south side of the house. She'd ridden in herself to the general store on the sorrel mare Wesley had given her use of, come back with seeds and a clay pot and nothing else. She didn't explain, and he didn't ask. One evening near the end of March, they were both at the table. She was working on a piece of beadwork that had been going slowly all winter, a geometric pattern in red and white and blue on deerskin. He was reading a letter from his sister in Tucson that had nothing much in it and had been sitting unread on the shelf for a week. The fire in the stove had burned to coals, and the room was warm, and the darkness outside the window had the soft quality that comes before the first real warmth of the year. She said, without looking up from the beadwork, "Wesley." He looked up. She said it in English, and she chose each word like she'd already thought about this. "I would stay. If you wanted, I would stay here." He set the letter down. He thought about all the ways he might answer that. The careful ones, the qualified ones, the ones that left room for everything to stay exactly as it was. He said, "I want you to stay." She looked at him then, looked at him the way she had in the camp the first day, without looking away. Except that it was different now, because now he knew her and she knew him, and the looking felt like something settled rather than something measured. She went back to her beadwork. He went back to the letter. The fire crackled once. That was enough. That was the whole thing. In April, Nantage came down himself with 2 other men, and Wesley met him at the gate. Nantage brought gifts: a horse blanket dyed with ochre and charcoal, a small pottery vessel his wife had made, and a pair of moccasins in Wesley's size. Wesley gave him a young bay colt and a bag of roasted coffee beans, and they shook hands with the gravity of 2 men making official what had already become real. Some stories begin as transactions and end as something truer than most people manage. Wesley rode into the Dragoon Mountains to sell horses and came home carrying something he hadn't known he was missing. Sonsei arrived at a stranger's ranch with a small bundle and a wariness earned over years, and she built a life there with an actual shape to it. She chose it. That is the part worth remembering. Not the chief's offer and not the exchange, what she chose, when she finally had a free hand to choose with. The fear and mistrust between their 2 worlds did not disappear. It never does. But they lived beside it and didn't let it decide things for them, and in that hard corner of the territory, that quiet steadiness was its own kind of courage. If this story meant something to you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like this one, and we'll keep telling them.